There's a reason why some real estate investments fail to perform even in strong markets. Very often, it's because the investment was evaluated without first understanding who was actually going to use it. When you ignore the user, you don't analyze demand, you assume it, and assumptions are where most investment mistakes begin. In this video, I want to show you what some investors overlook when evaluating real estate and how changing this one perspective can completely reshape the way you read real estate opportunities. Let's talk about Airbnb now. And to understand it properly, we need to change the starting point. Before looking at buildings, layouts, or returns, we need to understand the Airbnb guest. Airbnb is one of the most talked about investment models today, and also one of the most misunderstood. There are myths, outdated assumptions, and a big gap between perception and reality. So instead of starting with the investment, let's start with the user. Who is choosing Airbnb today? Why are they choosing it? And what problems are they trying to solve? When you answer those questions clearly, everything else begins to fall into place. That's where the real strategy starts. To understand why Airbnb has become so relevant, we need to understand how the guest has changed. The modern traveler is no longer looking for a room. They're looking for a way to live, even if it's temporary. People travel differently today. They work remotely. They travel with family. They stay longer. They mix business with lifestyle. And that has changed expectations. Traditional hotels were designed for short stays and fixed routines. Check in, sleep, check out. But today's guest wants flexibility. They want space to work, a kitchen, a living area, privacy without isolation. They want the freedom to adapt the space to their needs. That's where Airbnb fits naturally. Not because it's cheaper, but because it's more functional for how people actually live today. Another important shift is control. Today's guest wants autonomy. They don't want to feel constrained by rigid rules or limited options. They want to cook if they want to, work if they need to, rest without interruption. Hotels, in many cases, have become more restrictive, extra fees, limited flexibility, less adaptability. Even something as simple as accommodating one extra person often requires booking an entirely separate room. Airbnb solved that problem, not with luxury, but with design that adapts to real use. When you understand how the modern guest thinks, you stop seeing Airbnb as a trend. You start seeing it as a response to real behavioral changes. And once you see that, you're ready to move to the next layer. How Airbnb itself has evolved to meet those expectations. To fully understand Airbnb today, we also need to understand where it came from. Airbnb didn't start as a real estate strategy. It started as a solution to a problem. Back in 2007, in San Francisco, two designers rented out air mattresses in their apartment to help pay their rent during a busy conference week. That's where the name came from, Air Bed and Breakfast. The idea was simple: use existing space to solve a short-term housing need. At the time, no one was thinking about investment models, asset classes, or global scale. It was just a flexible and unstructured kind of help. Many people still think of Airbnb, the way it started, as something informal, sometimes chaotic. And to be fair, in its early years, that perception wasn't completely wrong. As the platform grew, it expanded inside traditional residential buildings that were never designed for hospitality use. There was no reception, no access control, no standardized guest experience. That phase created real challenges: security concerns, overcrowding, inconsistent quality, tension and conflicts with residents and homeowners associations. And eventually, regulation followed. But what many investors miss and people overlook is what happened next. Airbnb didn't disappear. It adapted and evolved. As demand became more sophisticated, the product had to evolve. A new generation of properties emerged, designed from day one for short-term rental use. These buildings are not traditional condos, and they're not hotels. They are purpose-built properties that combine hospitality infrastructure with residential functionality, professional front desks, controlled access, on-site management, hotel-style amenities. At the same time, the units themselves are designed differently, with the guest in mind. Efficient layouts, flexible sleeping arrangements, furniture optimized for real use, not just aesthetics, designed to maximize space and usability. For the guest, the experience feels predictable and familiar. They know what to expect, they feel safe, they feel supported, and that consistency is critical. Because when the experience is consistent, usage becomes repeatable. That's the shift many investors overlook. Airbnb didn't survive by avoiding structure, it survived by embracing it. Now, this is where strategy becomes visible. Once you understand how Airbnb evolved and why the guest experience became more structured, the way you analyze real estate starts to change. When you understand why the guest prefers this type of experience, you stop analyzing projects emotionally. You stop looking at projects only through numbers, and you start looking at them through design, function, and intent. Instead of asking only, "Is this a good deal?" you begin asking better questions. Who is this property designed for? How will the guest actually live inside this space? Does the layout support flexibility, or does it limit it? Does it solve actual user problems? Is it aligned with how people live today? You want to know whether the property is built for real demand. You start noticing things that many investors overlook. How the unit flows, how sleeping areas are arranged, how space is optimized. You pay attention to infrastructure, reception, security, management, not as features, but as part of the experience. Because experience drives behavior, and behavior drives demand. This is the shift. Projects that are designed with the guest in mind tend to create more predictable usage, not because of hype, not because of marketing, but because they solve real problems for real people. And when a product solves a real need consistently, demand becomes more stable. That's what strategy looks like when it's applied. It's not about chasing trends. It's about understanding why certain models work and others struggle. When you read projects this way, you're no longer reacting to what's popular. You're evaluating alignment. Alignment between the product, the guest, and the way people live today. That's how strategy reshapes the way you read real estate. So why does all of this matter? Because when you understand the guest first, you stop guessing. You stop relying on assumptions, trends, or surface level comparisons. Instead, you begin to evaluate real estate with clarity. You understand why certain properties maintain demand while others struggle to stay relevant. This perspective doesn't replace numbers. It gives them context. It helps you see which projects are aligned with how people actually live and which ones are simply following a concept that looks good on paper but isn't built for long-term use. And that distinction matters because real estate is a long-term decision. Markets change, cycles shift, but human behavior evolves in more predictable ways. When a product is designed around real use, it adapts better over time. That's why understanding the guest is not a detail, it's the foundation. When the guest wins, occupancy tends to become more predictable. And when occupancy is more predictable, the investment starts to make more sense. In the first two videos of this STR series, we talked about strategy and framework. We discussed why many investors enter markets like Miami without a clear structure, and how operating without a framework leads to invisible mistakes. Mistakes that don't show up immediately. Mistakes that appear years later. This video was the first bridge between theory and decision. Because strategy isn't abstract. It shows up in how you evaluate demand, how you read a project, and how you interpret risk and opportunity. And all of that begins with understanding human behavior. That's why understanding the potential tenant matters, because they are ultimately the reason demand exists in the first place. In the next video, we'll continue developing this idea and look at Airbnb from the investor's point of view. We'll talk about what this means when it comes to decision-making, risk, and long-term strategy. If this way of thinking has resonated with you, make sure you're subscribed to my channel and keep an eye on the continuity of this STR series and all other information I provide week after week. And if you want to explore this matter more in depth, I invite you to get my free guide called Miami's Pre-Construction Blueprint. You'll find the link in the description, or you can comment the word book and you'll receive it. This is not a pitch, it's a mentality designed to help you understand the strategy and find real estate investments that make sense. I'm Guillermo Teran, and I help buyers and investors make smart, confident decisions in Miami's real estate market. Check out these other videos for more insights and visit my website to learn more about Miami's pre-construction opportunities. If you're ready to take the next step, we'll explore the most relevant options in Miami's pre-construction real estate market and find the project that best fits your goals. Thank you for watching.